computer recording. All right. Okay, welcome along, everybody, to the third Cult Popture Movie Club. The third, I was going to say annual, but it's not. What, monthly?
Monthly, yeah.
The third monthly Cult Popture Movie Club, where you watching over on YouTube, you can join this live if you want by donating $15 or more to our Patreon, patreon.com/cultpopture, and joining the Cult Classic tier, where once a month we get together for an experimental, this time 6-way podcast, where we discuss one of the classic films together, or every month. One of the rules is the film has to be over 10 years old. Yep. Very covert sneeze there, Richard.
Thank you.
One of the rules is the film has to be over 10 years old, and so obviously every month we admit a new film into the list, and that does not have to be a cult classic. So the first one we allowed in was Legends of the Guardian, The Owls of Ga'Hoole. And then the next week was The Social Network, or the next month, The Social Network. Now Yogi Bear has been added to the mix. So we'll find out what the next month's...
It was a three-way, kind of, between Yogi Bear, King's Speech, and Black Swan.
I'm so glad you went with Bill Murray's seminal work, Yogi Bear.
It's
Tom Cavanaugh.
Timberlake.
Isn't he the voice?
No, it's T.J. Miller.
No, it's Dan Aykroyd.
Is it? Oh, no, T.J. Miller's the
I'm
human character.
My bad. Yeah.
Yeah, Dan Aykroyd.
I got my Ghostbusters confused.
Isn't Tom Cavanaugh on that?
Isn't he
Ranger Rick?
He's the Ranger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, maybe we'll find that out next month. Maybe we'll find all of that out next month, because one of these days we are going to land on one of the dud editions. So this month, though, we are discussing Vertigo, which is a 1958 Alfred Hitchcock classic based on the 1954 novel De Entre les Morts, or From Among the Dead, by Boilo Narcejac. There you go. There's my beautiful Kiwi accent pronouncing a French name, maybe the worst accent to pronounce a French name. And it stars Jimmy Stewart and Kim Novak, and is widely thought to be one of the best movies ever made, sight and sound, in the last 10 years. So in 2012, dethroned Citizen Kane and replaced it with Vertigo as the best movie ever made. It is
so Sight and Sound does every 10 years on the ending into 2012, 2002 so far. Back to 1942, they do a critics poll and a filmmakers poll of the greatest film of all time, and Citizen Kane won for 7 decades in a row. And then in 2012, Vertigo just randomly won. People just decided, oh no, Vertigo's better. But I think as well that topped the critics poll and the filmmakers poll. Tokyo Story won.
Oh wow!
Oh,
interesting.
Another great movie.
Wow, is it on our list?
I think so. Yeah,
should be.
Tokyo, it is 68. Oh, so close to 69.
to the funny number.
Not today. So there is a very, very interesting behind the scenes journey of Vertigo, of how it went from being kind of like a critical failure to the best movie ever made. But before we get into that, we should probably let anyone watching know what the movie is about. Who wants to
before
volunteer?
We go behind the scenes, let's go in front of the scenes.
Yeah, I agree. Who wants to volunteer to try and succinctly summarize what Vertigo 1958 is about? Does we have any volunteers?
With or without spoilers?
With spoilers.
That's what I was
We can do
ask.
spoilers. No, absolutely. This is for people who have seen them. It's a movie club. It's for people who have seen the movie.
I'll do it.
Cool, go for it.
So Vertigo is about a cop played by Jimmy Stewart, whose name I can't remember at the moment.
Scotty.
John.
Scotty. John
Everyone
or
in this movie has two names for some reason.
Scotty
John or Scotty.
Yeah. And After a failed attempt to get a robber who he was chasing on the rooftops of San Francisco, he watches a fellow cop plummet to his death and learns that he has vertigo. And so he's dealing with that knowledge of not being able to be a cop anymore when an old college chum hires him to follow his wife around because he thinks his wife is going crazy or is possibly possessed by a ghost.
Mhm.
Which, of course, Scotty thinks that's just nonsense. Hogwash, even.
It's hogwash! There's no such thing as ghosts!
So he starts to follow her around San Francisco, and with some really great shots of the city.
Mm-hmm.
And weird things start to happen, and he's trying to figure out the story, and it's a big old mystery. And he finds out who it is that she thinks she's being possessed by. It's like her grandmother?
Yeah, her great-grandmother who was cast aside from her husband after she bore him a child.
Yes. And she's like suicidal and crazy, and he's trying to help her. And then they go down to a mission a couple hours south of the city, and she jumps from the mission tower and dies. And that's the end of the movie. No.
Or rather, it should be. Anyways.
Yes. And
you're
then
not far off like how the movie actually is.
and then Jimmy Stewart is like hospitalized because he's again traumatized by not being able to save somebody due to his vertigo. And he spends a couple years in a hospital. Like,
he was also completely in love with her. They fell in love.
Yes, he fell in love with her
as well.
And couldn't save her. And he finally gets out of the hospital after an undisclosed amount of time. And just walking down the street trying to like re-put his life together, he sees her again, or someone that looks like her because her hair's different and she walks different and she sounds different. But he's not sure. And so they start hanging out, and he becomes in love with her.
So he does the only thing he knows how to do. He stalks her.
He becomes a total stalker, and and then he finds out the truth that like whole thing was a setup. He was being played.
Yeah. So
the new girl that appears, Judy, is actually the same person.
Yes.
But she was acting as Madeline in the first half of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So the plot that's uncovered is that his college chum killed his wife and then threw her body off the thing, knowing that Jimmy Stewart wouldn't be able to get to the top of the bell tower because of his acrophobia combined with the vertigo. And
he would act as a genuine witness to her suicide, exonerating Gavin, who's his college chum. So like he was like Scotty is uniquely qualified to be tricked here because Gavin knows him and he can't climb high, right? So it's
He's a patsy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, not really, because the blame's not on him. He just serves as a witness. He doesn't go to prison or anything. He's just supposed to serve as a witness, unknowingly exonerating Gavin from any crime of murder.
He's just thoroughly traumatized by the experience.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, as you would be.
But when he's in the hospital, he literally doesn't speak.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about how the film ends?
Oh, nah. So he goes full on stalker, and he forces her to dress like Madeline and get her hair dyed like Madeline, styled like Madeline, and he basically becomes the villain of the story. And he's like forcing her to do all this stuff that she doesn't want to do, but she does it anyway because she loves him and wants him to love her, but wants her to love her for who she is, not who she was.
Yeah,
it's complicated. And they go back down to the mission, and he's trying to I think he's trying to get her to admit the truth. And because
he works out all of this.
Yeah. And I think ultimately, he's hoping that after all this traumatic stuff he does to her, that they'll just live happily ever after, which is, clearly he's not in the right headspace to be deciding these things. And they climb the tower again. He overcomes his vertigo. They get to the top, and they almost get their happy ending until a nun comes up, scares Judy, and she falls for real off the tower.
And that's where it ends.
The film, and then literally just like bam, no credits.
No,
I think the one thing that might have been missing is the way that he discovers it. is pretty fun because
Right.
he asks her to go to dinner, or she asks him or whatever. She gets all dressed up and she's wearing the necklace that he saw in the picture when he was watching her at the art museum.
Mhm.
It was the picture of her great grandmother
Yeah.
or whoever it was, right?
Carlotta.
So it's like this one thing. It's kind of like the
Smoking
never
gun.
mind.
Well, the smoking gun.
Yeah, it's the one thing that connects all the 2-3 characters in the thing.
It's Chekhov's necklace.
Which
Sure.
is also kind of like Hitchcock's. That feels very Hitchcockian, right? To have a smoking gun. So before we get into our thoughts on the film, I did just want to offer a fun observation, which is that this is our third movie club movie. The first was Taxi Driver, the second was Casablanca, and this kind of feels like you put both of them in a pot, and this is what came out, right? This is an old Hollywood classic, much like Casablanca, but it also ends up being about a Travis Bickle type obsessive relationship.
Incel.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I thought that was a fun observation, but I am keen to hear what everybody thinks of it. Mainly, is this the best movie ever made? Is the question, I guess.
It could be. It's really good.
Yeah, you like it?
I was honestly shocked with how much, because like whenever I saw again, like when we talked about Casablanca is a good movie, but I think this is better than Casablanca. I think this is a more exciting movie, and that's more my speed. And so I was really engaged with this, whereas with Casablanca, I kind of had to I had to pay more attention to Casablanca on purpose, whereas this had a very I feel like a more natural storytelling for me, at least.
Okay, cool.
Action rolled out in a way that was easy for me to pay attention to.
Nice. All right.
Yeah, I found myself sucked in as well. I was on the edge of my seat most of the time, which is weird for an old movie because often we find them boring today. But that being said, I was sucked in because I was just on the edge of my seat, tense, hating every character, not enjoying what was going on. And yet I watched it, front to back. So nice. I definitely get that it was very exciting.
Vincent, what did you think?
I went into this movie just knowing Jimmy Stewart as like a meme of him, as we all be like, oh yeah, up on the window there. So I was fully expecting to just see that for just 2 hours of him trying to uncover like, oh, there's a mystery and I gotta find it. But in the end, I think he is fantastic in this movie. I think he is so layered in the craziness. I mean, as a sane man in the beginning, then the craziness, and the deeper this thriller goes into, how he goes just as crazy and convoluted as the plot is, and then once he figures it out, then he's back into his like analytical, like okay, so Madeline was not really you, it was a fake decoy. Was it Gavin? He's saying what happened at the end at the bell tower because he figured it out. He didn't need anyone to tell him. Just on that long drive to the end, just culminating into him regaining his like sanity and getting over his vertigo, because getting over the vertigo, I think, is what got him back into what made him a good PI, just being able to analyze every single thing. Because the way he was tailing her in the beginning of the movie, like, honestly, didn't think he was a good tailor, because I mean, of course it's a movie, but how close he was driving to her and how he was just like behind a column in the art museum, like I could definitely feel he would be a bad one in real life. But
sir, you're the only other person in this building. Leave me alone.
He like stalks her at the graveyard, and he's standing 3 meters away from her as she turns a corner.
She just stared at the graveyard. She's like, "Is that Jimmy Stewart over there?"
I've been to that museum several times. I've never seen it that empty.
Wow.
So, but also I wasn't there in the '60s, so.
True. Very true.
Famously empty in the '60s. Mike, you are well versed in Hitchcock, aren't you?
I am. I have now, as of this year, I have seen every Hitchcock movie. Cool.
Where does this one rank for you?
It often vacillates for the #1 spot between this and North by Northwest.
Okay.
And I think, and it's probably whichever one I watch is the one that's going to be in the #1 slot. So right now it's Vertigo. But if I were to watch North by Northwest tomorrow, it might edge the #1 spot again. Like they're so close.
Nice. Because I'm very unfamiliar with Hitchcock. This is the third Hitchcock movie I've seen. I've seen Rear Window.
I hadn't even heard of them until we watched this.
I've seen Rear Window, which I don't really remember, and my main takeaway I remember having at the time was that I preferred Disturbia, which is a modern reimagining of... Disturbia is a good movie. It's maybe not better than Rear Window, but it's a good movie. And I'd also seen Rebecca, which I quite liked. Haven't seen Psycho, hadn't seen Vertigo before. So this was my first time watching it. And one of the things that I thought was real interesting is like, if you were to ask me, what's this movie about? The response is like, well, when in the movie are you asking me what it's about? Because it's either about a man tailing a woman who thinks she's possessed. It's either about a man falling in love with said woman. It's either about that, or it's about a man discovering that, or her dying and him getting over that, or it's about a man discovering that the woman who did die didn't actually die, etc., etc. And like, I knew nothing about this movie going in. Like, I knew
I'm so jealous.
I knew the cast. I didn't even really know what it was about. I presumed it was about Vertigo. It has the Vertigo shot, the first use of the dolly zoom, which is when you move the camera. What is it? You move it towards the subject while
you track in and zoom out.
Yeah, or vice versa.
Yeah, right. And it creates that effect when he looks down, which revolutionized things a lot, and it was the first film to use that, and so it's often called the Vertigo shot. So I knew that about it. I think I knew there was something about a bell tower in it. I think that was somewhat familiar to me. But I didn't know the significance of anything. And watching it the first time, I wasn't as gripped by it as I was by watching Citizen Kane for the first time. And I have this unique gift that apparently not a lot of other people have, which is when I learn more about a movie, when I like study it and look at its subtext, I like actually quantifiably begin to enjoy it more. And I say I'm unique in that because everyone always complains about studying V for Vendetta in high school or whatever. And
it depends on the movie. I studied Juno and hated it. I studied like The Constant Gardener and loved it.
Right, there you go.
Some movies are just too shallow.
Yeah, we did in my second year of high school, we did Bridge to Terabithia, and I don't like that movie that much. So, maybe you're right. Maybe it does depend on the movie. But yeah, so at first I was kind of like lukewarm on it, but after studying it a bit more, and like what's more important to me as well is understanding why it's considered the best movie ever made. And I looked a bit into that, which is pretty interesting. The themes are really cool, and the sort of often you'll find what's so revered is the innovative techniques which now are commonplace, and so that and so it's hard to
same
see
kind of thing with Citizen Kane.
Yeah. So yeah, Richard, what do you think of the movie?
So I watched this movie in I think 2013 for the first time. So it was just after it was announced as like the greatest movie of all time, and I didn't really like it. And then watching it again, I still didn't really like it. I don't really like this movie. Yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't do it for me. I've seen other Hitchcock films, like even with Jimmy Stewart. Like, I haven't seen North by Northwest, but I've seen Rope and Rear Window, and I both like those a lot more. But Vertigo, just something about it just doesn't do it for me. I think the weird kind of obsessiveness is a big turn off. Like by the end of the film is quite a turn off, and then and just the kind of the ending that it's just like, oh yeah, she fell. Like, I don't know. The ending I found so jarring and so bizarre.
I guess it feels
part
like
of that is part of what you don't like about it is what I do like about it, because Jimmy Stewart's one of those guys who's just effortlessly charming.
Yeah.
And from like minute
he's a rich man's Tom Hanks.
Yeah. And like from like minute one in this movie, you're just like, oh yeah, like I'm rooting for this guy. Like I want this guy to win, and you love him, and he's great, and he's charming, and he's fascinating, and he's cool. And then, in the end, he just like after he's like traumatized, he takes such a dark turn. And you don't normally see Jimmy Stewart take that kind of dark turn in a movie.
Yeah.
And it was cool to watch him kind of become the villain.
That
And
is
I really
one
love
of the things it was. So okay, so basically, if people
And
don't know,
that's an idea I like on paper, but I just like the execution of it. I think like the idea of taking a Tom Hanks or like Henry Fonda type that's known for playing these nice guy kind of characters and slowly turning him evil. Like, yeah, that's a great idea, but yeah, something about it I think just doesn't work for me on film, and maybe in the hands of a better director,
such as who directed Disturbia?
No one knows that.
Who cares?
with a likable star like Shia LaBeouf.
So, like,
DJ
especially
Caruso.
these days.
DJ
I don't know
Caruso
that.
should have directed Vertigo.
With Shia LaBeouf. Such a likable guy.
Oh.
Yeah, especially this week.
Especially this week.
If anyone's wondering, DJ Caruso's he's got 3 upcoming films. One is a remake of a movie called Sex Crimes. Oh no, sorry, he's got loads of upcoming films. Okay, so the last film he directed was XXX: The Return of Xander Cage. He then did
classic.
Mark of
doing
quality.
a movie next year called Redeeming Love, and then which is a Christian romantic drama. He's then doing The Expendables: A Christmas Story, the sex crime remake, G.I. Joe: Ever Vigilant, and then XXX4. So
Wow.
that's who we're dealing with. Man,
I can only
Disturbia is
hope
by far the only movie I like of his.
I can only hope that the Expendables: The Christmas Story is the guys from the Expendables doing A Christmas Story,
I
the
hope
movie
so
about
too.
walking.
Oh, my tongue's stuck on the pole.
They have to go save Santa.
Oh, that was amazing.
For the record, the Expendables Christmas Story, I think, is a spin-off about Jason Statham's character. His last name is Christmas.
Oh, my tongue's stuck
that's
on
right.
the pole.
The pole.
So for those who don't know this about Vertigo, when it came out, it received mixed reviews and then sort of just dropped off the face of the planet for about 20 years or so. And then Alfred Hitchcock died, and then after he died, it was re-examined, and people were like, "This is the best movie ever made," basically.
Wow.
In about the 80s, and then it slowly rose through. Like, it wasn't even on Sight and Sound's list until I think the 70s, and then each decade crept up the list from being like a film that Alfred Hitchcock actually felt quite bitter about until the end of his life. It wasn't until he was passed on that it actually received the acclaim.
It's funny you say like, oh, it wasn't even on the list until the 70s, but the list before that was 4 years after it came out. So it's like it's not that unreasonable that it would like that it would get on there in the 70s.
That's a good point. And I might have got that wrong. I'm not sure. So in 1989 was when Vertigo was selected for by the Library of Congress for preservation in the National Film Register for being, say it with me, culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Cool. So that's all to give you an idea of like the real weird and circumstances which I don't think could happen again. I think film criticism, and when something's up for cultural reevaluation, it's usually going the other way these days. It's not usually
something like Josie and the Pussycats. I think Josie and the Pussycats is this generation's Vertigo.
Not on a mass scale though. The most I've seen that happen recently would I've seen a lot of Jennifer's Body appreciation.
Yeah.
In the last few months, which is a movie that, for all intents and purposes, like landed with a thud when it came out. But even then, it feels like it's more of a cult following as opposed to Vertigo, which is.
Well, I think it was one of those films that was marketed as like, look how hot the girl from Transformers is. Look, you might see her boobies in this one, but then it was like actually this like intelligent kind of like commentary on like the sexualization of women.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So one of the reasons that Alfred Hitchcock thought the film failed was that the 49-year-old Jimmy Stewart was too old for the 24-year-old Kim Novak at the time. And I think that's really interesting because then I read another rebuttal to that was like, no, that's why this is a beautiful critique of, like, all the themes are talking about like how men control women is basically what this movie is about, right? And
would it have been as effective in those last scenes when he's going up and he's saying all the words out loud? Would it have been as effective if he wasn't using, I mean, essentially his physicality to force her up? You know, it's not just that he was a bigger man, but it's his imposition just as being an older man. There's the whole sort of that's implicit in that situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Imagine if the ages were reversed and it was like a 24-year-old dude trying to shove a middle-aged woman up the stairs.
Get up the stairs. So
she just like backhand him.
I think that is a really
it's like
interesting.
Frances McDormand.
Frances McDormand and let's say Shia LaBeouf.
He would stand a chance.
Lucas Hedges is the
Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah, Timothy Chalamet. And so it's really interesting that a lot of these things were somewhat accidental or maybe just not picked up on at the time. That, like, well, I mean, if Hitchcock himself said that Jimmy Stewart was too old, clearly he didn't get it as well. But people are like, no, that's the point. This is a movie about a guy who we see ignore a sensible romantic option in his life because his best friend Midge, you know, is this kind of, I feel like she's still in love with him, maybe, is kind of the vibe.
Yeah,
I got that too.
Appreciation conversation at some point in this thing. Loved her.
Yeah. And it's about a man who literally falls in love with a woman who doesn't exist, right? Like, literally, like he falls in love with the idea of a woman, and when he finds the real her and she's different. And I watched a video by The Take that talked about how, like, even how she's made up is like, Madeline, the fake one, is like got like natural makeup on and wears neutral colors, whereas Judy, the real one, wears loads of makeup, wears like bright colors, has a completely different hairstyle, and like that shows that she's developed an identity that is at the very least separate from the Madeline identity. And so it's about a man who falls in love with a woman that doesn't exist, and then when he finds that woman again, but now she's got more personality, he forces her to readjust to be a dead thing, a literal dead thing. You know, there's a audio commentary from Hitchcock where he says it's a film about necrophilia, essentially, right? Like, he says those words exactly. He says that it's necrophilia because he's in love with a dead thing.
I think we need to discuss Kim Novak's performance because I think she's amazing in this.
Yeah.
That transformation from Madeline to Judy. It's like they're such different characters, and she plays them both so well and so distinctly.
To the point where
she's timeless.
Not really recognizing her as an actress before this.
Yeah,
I didn't initially realize it was this. Like, I picked up on it, but initially I was like, this looks a lot like Kim Novak, but I don't know if it is because the first
she's
thing
that good.
No, it's good stuff. It's good stuff.
It was also funny. Yeah. This is one of those films where, like Inception, where it's about it's about two things, and people think that they're both called that. So, like, vertigo, people just think means fear of heights now, but it's like he has acrophobia, which is a fear of heights, which triggers vertigo, which is like a feeling of dizziness. And whereas like Inception, people take to mean like different, like something inside something, but it's like they do that to incept an idea.
One scene that I really related to in this film is when he's hanging out with Midge, who's his best friend and confidant, and he's in the middle of the whole story, and she shows him a painting that she's done, which is the painting of Coletta, whatever her name is, the grandmother that at this point in the film we think Madeline is possessed by, and she recreates the painting but replaces the head with her own, with Midge replaces the head with her own head, and Scotty, Jimmy Stewart, is just like, oh, that's not funny, Midge, and like leaves the apartment. And my curse, gentlemen, is doing a joke that I think the other person will receive fine, only to find I've mortally offended them. This is the famous lost episode of Cult Popture, is about that. I did this yesterday. I won't go into it because the wound's still a little fresh, but with my flatmate, I did this. While watching the movie, I made a joke that I thought he would be okay with, and he wasn't. It's the story of my life is making. This happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I'll tell you off air. But like it's always, no, but it's always more than a joke. It's like I create something. The podcast was I created that, or tried to anyway. And yesterday I like made a picture that he did not like, and so it's I related to it's so hard because after he leaves, it's like one of the only scenes in the film we get without Jimmy Stewart in it, and it's Midge being like pulling her hair up, being so stupid. It's like, yeah, I get it, Midge. I get it. It's
yeah, that was stupid, Midge.
The way that he did that shot where you see the picture and then it either zooms or pans, I can't remember, but it almost instantly goes from that to the mirror of her with it was so good. It was, I said it in the Discord, but this is one of those movies where literally every frame is a painting. It's very, very, very pretty.
Nice. Cool. So, does anybody have any other thoughts they want to bring up about this film as we trek through it? Does anybody have any talking points?
I want to talk about my most disturbing moment in the film, which was when he is sitting down with Judy in the department store trying to find the clothes, and he is getting more aggravated about, no, it's not the right color. It's this gray. I know it was here. Oh. And then how the customer people aren't really like phased by it, seeing this man talking sternly to her, like, no, I know what I want. He knows what he wants. Like, what?
He's a confident man who knows what he wants.
Yeah. Just, I did not like
this one's fine. And they go, well, no, we'll wait till he's happy. He's like,
Customer's always right. One of my favorite moments in the movie is the moment where they're at Fort Point when they're below the Golden Gate Bridge, and she's like staring out the water, and like he's watching her, and she jumps in. He has to jump in and save her, or she falls in, or jumps in. That's they're trying to figure that out. But I loved that just the imagery of that scene, and I actually tried to shoot there for my my thesis film when I was in film school. That's awesome. And it was really expensive to get a permit to shoot there, so I shot about like quarter of a mile down the beach, so I could still get the Golden Gate Bridge in the shot, but it's not that nice dynamic like right below the bridge. But I didn't have the Hitchcock budget. I didn't have that Hitchcock budget, so I couldn't afford to shoot there. But yeah, it's
one thing I want to discuss with you guys: the final moments of the film where the nun shows up and Judy falls, is that she gets spooked and is just like gets a fright and loses her balance, or does she go, "Oh shit, they found me! I'm not going to prison," and jumps?
Ooh. I think she's spooked.
I think she's scared.
Yeah,
because I remember it being as like she just gets a fright and falls, but in the film it looks like she turns around with purpose.
The all synopses say it's her getting spooked that I've read.
Yeah, I mean, like still, if you were like, oh, he got spooked and jumped off, like,
because the nun comes up like in silhouette, so she looks like a specter of death or something. Like it's kind of a terrifying image, even for a viewer, like the movie viewer.
Yeah, it looks like it's like a cop, or like she might like. I feel like you can interpret it as like she thinks it's the cops or something like that, because she's terrified of what he now knows and what he's going to do, what Scotty knows and what he's going to do to her, and then someone coming out of the shadows. Like, part of me thinks that maybe she did actually just kill herself at the end.
It's interesting. So the way that Hitchcock, presents the movie is it's the tragedy of Scotty's character. But I feel like, and I was thinking this once, in between the end of the movie and now, I was thinking that if you started this movie with the relationship between what's her real name?
Judy.
Judy.
You started it with the relationship between Judy and what's his
Gavin.
name's buddy, and then from there, and you see her being this desperate woman who wants to fall in love with this guy or who wants to be with him, and there's a whole nother story there that's probably just as good as the one that we watched that's completely untold in this movie.
There is a prequel novel written a couple of years ago, actually, that's called it's called like the Judy Bartlett story or something like that. It's called The Testament of Judith Barton.
Hmm.
In 2012 novel by Wendy Powers, tells the backstory of Kim Novak's character. So there you go.
What an arrogant thing to write, eh? Like just being like, this is the greatest movie ever made, but I think I could improve. I think I've got more to say. Like,
yeah, no, I agree. I wanted to pick on what you were saying there, Brent, about the kind of female perspective, because one really cool kind of metatextual reading of this film is about how it's about a man obsessed with a woman who doesn't exist, who then transforms her into a Hitchcock blonde, because Hitchcock famously cast blondes in it. And by all accounts, this wasn't something Hitchcock wasn't aware of. Like, it's like people, a lot of readings of this film are that Hitchcock was announcing his flaws to the world and like admitting to them, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but that also feels like a very Hitchcockian thing to do, to like be like, I suck, here's why I suck, you know?
Yeah, totally.
It feels like that kind of self-deprecation is something that he was not a lot of directors, I think, go there, except for like ones that aren't as good as Hitchcock.
like your DJ Caruso's.
Yeah, or like Kevin Smith has talked.
Yeah, that's who I was thinking of.
Yeah, he's talked a lot about how he sucks, and the general consensus now is like, well, yeah, kind of, man.
I mean, he does it as a defense mechanism, like clearly.
Yeah, whereas Hitchcock turns it into art, I guess. You know.
Yeah. Kevin Smith, I get the sense that he's actually like very humble and is like uncomfortable with praise.
Right.
Yeah.
Because Hitchcock clearly loved it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, what else should we talk about? Does anybody else have anything we can talk about?
Is there anything else anyone vaguely remembers about Yogi Bear they want to share?
I saw that in theaters.
Wow.
We haven't talked about the dream sequence yet, which is very kind of trippy and out of place.
Oh, I love
it. Don't like that.
So good.
Like dream sequences are weird in movies because it's like,
yeah, that's the point, Richard.
Have the people who made it never dream?
I'm sorry, go on, man.
Like it's because when it's stuff like that, it's like, has the person who made this ever had a dream? Because that's not what it's like.
But I mean, it's Hitchcock. Like, he goes for like the interesting visual. He's not trying to make it realistic.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
Do you prefer the trippy dream sequence from Vertigo or the trippy dream sequence from Beavis and Butthead Do America?
Yeah, I've erased that from my memory.
Has anyone else seen the Hitchcock film Spellbound? No. And in that movie, he does another dream sequence. That's a Cary Grant movie. He does another dream sequence where he actually got Salvador Dali to like of art, do the art direction on it, and it's like a really famous like dream sequence because it's all this trippy like Dali like surrealistic like imagery and stuff, and it's all like metaphor for things going on in the movie. And it's that was just like 20 years before this, and I feel like he was trying to kind of do it again here, but without the influence of a master artist to kind of guide the imagery.
So he got Saul Bass, master artist.
Yeah, he did get Saul Bass.
Yeah, it felt Saul Bassian.
It is Saul Bass.
Yeah,
those great opening credits.
Yeah, I've actually, when I say I've never seen Vertigo before, I've actually seen the opening credits a few times because I've taught it in my my course where I show people what opening credits can look like, and the evolution of opening credits from like Vertigo to like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, I think is one of the ones that we show, where it's like the so that's cool. I'm just looking through the Wikipedia page, not to just relay information, but to see if there's any more talking points.
I had some notes here.
Yep.
One of mine is that there's an establishing shot of a plaza at some point, and it's the same plaza that you skateboard in the San Francisco level on Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Oh, nice.
Oh
I
yeah.
felt that was culturally significant.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also had, are we going to have to talk about Manic Pixie Dream Girls again?
Well, it's definitely in there, and I think talking about it from the imagine being so unself-aware to come in and talk about how this film's about toxic masculinity, like as a critique of it. Be like, the main character is he's not a good guy at the end. It's actually really racist. Because people are doing that with It's a Wonderful Life recently. We're like, sorry, it's about suicide. Guess we're gonna cancel it.
I love that movie.
Yeah,
I just watched it like last week.
Dude,
So good.
can I pitch you guys a movie that I dreamt this idea?
Ooh,
I
better be better than
Regular
this
dream or cheese dream?
It was kind of, it might have been a cheese dream. It would certainly work well in my cheese dream game. This is an idea I dreamed, and I messaged it to Richard as soon as I woke up so that I wouldn't forget it, and he just like reacted to it. So I don't think he liked it. But I've been thinking about it all week. So the movie is set in our world. So when It's a Wonderful Life came out, and it's about Jimmy Stewart, so it's relevant to the Vertigo episode. When It's a Wonderful Life came out, the actual angels in actual heaven were like, that's a pretty good idea to take suicidal people and show them a world where they've never been born. Like that's a good idea and probably would work as a process of being a guardian angel and helping someone move on. And so this becomes like a standard procedure in an angel business, right? Is that you take all across time, all across history, you go to different points, you take a person who's going to be, is going to do significant things, and you show them a world where they were never born to convince them they shouldn't kill themselves. And one day, the main character, who's an angel, he goes down and meets a guy who's depressed, and he's like, I'll show you a world where you were never born so you can understand how important you are. He takes him to the other world, but when he gets there, he discovers that the guy he's taken to the world where he was never born is actually the guy who wrote It's a Wonderful Life. And so now he lives in a alternate universe where It's a Wonderful Life was never written, an objectively worse universe, like designed to be worse, and now the angel can't get out of it because It's a Wonderful Life was never written, so the angels of this universe never got bestowed that power. And so he's stuck in an objectively worse universe and has to convince this guy who's already suicidal to write this incredibly cheerful and uplifting screenplay that he doesn't want to write anymore because life is worse here. And it'll be called It's an Objectively Not as Wonderful Life. It's the title.
That's a great premise. I like it.
Made it in your pitch without having to mention that the guy that he rescued was actually Hitler. That's
That's the sequel. That's the sequel. We can do that as well. So I dreamt that, and then I woke up and I was like, oh, I gotta write this down.
a really
Good one.
dream.
There you go. So that's just me trying to pad
Not
out
just
time.
some dumb flashing colors around your face.
Just trying to pad out time to give you guys your $15 worth of movie club content.
There's that other great shot, getting back to the movie.
Oh, sorry.
The movie we're here to discuss. There's that great shot where Judy and Scotty kiss in the apartment, and the camera starts to like spin around them. And then the location changes from the apartment to the carriage house, like back to the apartment, and it's all done in one spinning shot. And I thought that was a really impressive kind of special effect for the time.
I watched a video essay about it that proudly and boldly claimed that was the greatest scene ever filmed.
Wow.
Oh no!
That's a
Which is-
tall order.
It's not even really a scene; it's just a camera movement.
Yeah.
I also watched that same video by The Take, where I was interviewing like a movie historian about it, and he said the dumbest fucking line. He was like, "A lot of people say that Vertigo is the greatest movie ever made, and I don't know if it is necessarily, but it is inarguably one of the most interesting movies ever made." I'm like, that's the same. That's as stupid of a thing to say.
That's what you write at the end of the essay when you don't have enough to finish out that last page.
I was padding.
Speaking of which, I said I'm so glad you brought that up, Brent, because in the on the Wikipedia page, which I sort of just skimmed through last night, there's this one excerpt that just reads like someone doesn't know what any of these words mean, where it says. Critics have interpreted Vertigo variously as a tale of male aggression and visual control, as a map of female Oedipal trajectory, as a deconstruction of the male construction of femininity and of masculinity itself, as a stripping bare of the mechanisms of directorial Hollywood studio and colonial oppression, and as a place where textual meanings play out in an infinite regress of self-reflexivity.
Wow.
That was written at 3 a.m. the night before they had to hand in their essay.
I mean, I guess it makes sense, and I don't necessarily disagree with it, but it's just like don't only use $10 words. Use a couple.
That is a word salad for sure.
Vincent, I think I just realized this, but did you go from wearing your Cult Popture hoodie, the Jurassic Popture, to the Cult Popture shirt?
Guilty as charged. Well, I was wearing the hoodie and I just took it off because they got warm. But I'm double dipping today.
Wow, very proud.
Gotta represent.
Just catching up after missing the first two movie clubs.
Yeah, I think I'm compensating.
Awesome.
There's one scene I'm curious about. So in the first act where he's channeling the supposedly possessed person, he follows her to a hotel, and he sees her drive up to the hotel. She goes up the stairs, opens the window. When he goes in, the receptionist has no idea what he's talking about, and she's not in the hotel, and the car is gone. So when I first saw this movie, I was like, okay, so she is a ghost then. What's going on there? But did I just miss something, or is that just intentionally not explained?
Maybe it's.
I took it as they were paid off.
Maybe actually, yeah.
I mean, there's one actress, so why can't there be another one? I mean, the guy's rich.
Surely the film's trying to. I maybe looking back at it now, maybe it's like set up so that it's to reaffirm the spectral kind of implications that they're trying to convince Scotty of, maybe. But I don't know. Yeah, that's a good point. That it does feel like it doesn't go anywhere. Isn't answered.
Yeah, I think they're not really leaning into the fact that she's a ghost.
Though.
Yeah.
The biggest flaw that I have with this movie, and like again, I love this movie, but one of the biggest flaws I think it has is that after the wife is murdered and is like deemed a suicide, and the husband pays off Judy to go live her life, and she did her part in the scheme. Why does she stay in San Francisco where she knows
and go to the same places?
Yeah, and go to the same places. Like, why didn't he move her to like Europe or New York or just get her away?
Yeah.
Like the only thing I can think of is that she wanted to stay because she still loved him and she was hoping that like when he stopped being crazy they could get back together. But that's I don't even that seems like
you're not the first to criticize that element of it. There was a contemporary critic who, after its reevaluation, much like Richard, came in and was like, "What? No, this movie's still stupid. What are you talking about?"
Because the thing about that though, I actually don't really have that much of a problem with that specific part, because that's one of those things that, like, to me that feels like a character flaw rather than like a film flaw. Like it's either like Gavin's like hubris, like that he's just like, yeah, fuck, like we got away with this, cool, let our guard down, or like he's being cheap, like he wasn't willing to pay to relocate her, or it's it's like her kind of hubris being like, I can get away, I'll just change my hair, like he won't notice that. Or like they're all underestimating Scotty essentially, because also he's catatonic for a year, and so they probably just assume that he's going to be like that forever, and like, sweet, cool, you just go back to your old life. Because this woman had like a full life before Gavin said, can you come be Madeline for a bit?
maybe
so
the
I think there's enough reasons in there why.
There's a whole book about it.
Yeah.
maybe the better option was to go the Iron Man 3 Trevor Slattery approach and have it actually she's just a working actor in San Francisco and like this is another gig.
Yeah.
It's like, what, you want me to leave San Francisco? I've built my whole network here. I can't just start again. I have a theater. I'm a regular at the theater. Sweet. Okay. Yep. What?
Oh, I was just gonna say that the scene where we were talking about it earlier, but where the camera tracks when they're in the restaurant.
Yeah.
I thought that, like, it reminded me, and I guess this is backwards, but of the like most famous restaurant tracking camera shot was Goodfellas, and it felt very similar to that, but only about 12 seconds instead of 2.5 minutes or whatever that.
Might actually be pulling from the one from Wings, which is the first ever Best Picture winner. Where it zooms.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. That's a good point.
Hitchcock's really good at those, like starting like the guy because it starts close on Jimmy Stewart, and he looks over, and then the camera pans out wide to the restaurant to show us the whole restaurant, and then you see like them in the corner, and then like zooms in on what he's looking at. He's really good at doing that kind of camera movements to like lead the audience to where they're supposed to be looking.
I'll say it. Alfred Hitchcock's a good visual storyteller. I don't care who knows it.
Hot takes from AJ.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, well, we will draw Movie Club December to a close there. But before we do, we've got to select our next month's movie. And usually Richard would do this with his fancy number generator, but he's actually in the middle of moving house and is using his phone currently to talk to us. So I'm going to do it on my phone, and because this is a visual medium, you can actually see it now instead of not seeing.
So you've taken my word for it.
Yeah, well, we usually hear a voice.
Yeah, we hear the lady.
Okay, so
but you don't know what numbers I'm entering in.
We've got 204 films on the Cult Classics list. So as we said, they are movies that are 10 years or older. They don't have sequels because we'd save them for film franchise fortnights, and they are considered culturally or aesthetically significant. So
also Yogi Bear.
Also Yogi Bear and Guardians of Galhul. The Owls of Galhul. So I'm going to generate it now. And it is number 54. We can all see that.
Finally, a two-digit number.
Finally.
Finally.
All right, so franchise number 54. I'll make you
Not
guess.
franchise, AJ. Get your mind out of the podcast gutter.
All right. It's a movie.
What?
Okay.
Oh.
Ooh.
I think it is directed by... I should just look it up because I don't want to... And
do what you think it's directed by.
Yeah. Who?
I think it's Sergio Leone.
Ooh.
Oh.
Is it a Western?
How did you know? It is Sergio Leone.
Is it Once Upon a Time in America?
No.
Oh.
Once Upon a Time
In Hollywood?
In the West. It is
In the
Once
West.
Upon a Time in the West.
So good.
Is it good?
I was thinking about this because this is the famous example of a good guy actor playing against type.
Oh, this is the Henry Fonda one, the one you mentioned before.
Yeah.
It's happening on the Cult Classics.
Jesus Christ.
We need to stop mentioning anything in these podcasts because it always ends up being the thing that we end up selecting.
We just got to sit for silence for an hour, and that way you can't mention anything. Be really
The Yogi Bear.
It literally says in the second sentence on the Wikipedia page, it stars Henry Fonda cast against type as the villain.
Much like James Stewart was in Vertigo.
And Cast Against Type has its own link.
Ooh.
So that'll be
dive into that next week.
That'll be the first of 2021. It'll be January's movie club. So we'll let you guys. It'll probably be about the same time of the month, about the same time of the day, but this time it'll be the correct times of the day. No, it might not be actually. Who knows? Who's to say?
I don't think we should commit to that.
We'll see you guys then. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks, guys. It's been fun.
Yeah. See you later. Bye.